questions. Many of you don't know me. My name is Fawaz Georges, and I am a professor of international relations and also the director of the Eastern Center at the London School of Economics. It really gives me great pleasure tonight to introduce our speaker, Dr. Hyatham Manna. Hyatham will address the topic of violence and democratic perspectives in Syria. Most of you know Dr. Manna very well, much more than I do. This is the first time I meet Hyatham. I'm really delighted. He is the head of the Syrian National Coordination Body for Democratic Change in exile, one of the leading oppositional groups outside Syria. Just to remind everyone that he's different from the Syrian National Council for some of you who basically, because we have brought several people from the Syrian National Council over the last year, Dr. Burhan Alioun and Dr. Hyatham and others. Dr. Manna is an academic and human rights advocate by profession. I think to me, one of his most important accomplishments is that he was the co-author and founder of the Arab Commission for Human Rights in 1998. And this is a testament to where he comes from. He comes from human rights activism, and as you well know, Hyatham comes from one of the leading Syrian family, well known for its political activism and human rights. And this is really a double pleasure to have you here, Hyatham, at the LSE. He received a PhD in anthropology from the International Institute of Sociology in Paris, and I'm not going to go and list all of his achievements over the last few years. I think I would like myself, as an observer of the Syrian scene tonight, to hear from Hyatham about his vision, about the raging violence in Syria, and about the potential for democratic change, or the various visions about democratic perspectives in Syria. In particular, I would like Hyatham to address the question, because as you know, Hyatham has been one of the vocal voices who is opposed to foreign military intervention in Syria. First of all, I would like to really hear his perspective. Are you still opposed to military intervention in Syria? And if so, why? Why are you still opposed to direct military intervention, outside intervention in Syria, even though most of the opposition groups inside Syria and outside Syria do call for military intervention? I also would like to hear from Hyatham his views on the opposition and why the opposition has not succeeded in basically coalescing around one particular vision, one particular roadmap. And my question to Hyatham is diversity of the opposition, and myself trying to understand, is the diversity within the opposition a source of strength or a liability? Is it an asset as opposed to being a source of weakness? And of course, he has much to say, but I won't take much of your precious time. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hyatham Manna to the London School of Economics.
Good evening, and thank you for this invitation. I hate the Alawites and the Shiites. We are going to kill them with our knives, just they kill us. When I read this sentence in the very professional newspaper, International Herald Tribune, in an article about a Za'atari camp in Jordan, I asked 3 of my friends to ask 60 children in the same camp, what is the name of the 3 Shiite families in Daraa? After 20 days, not one of the children had an answer. How can we hate an enemy who you cannot personalize in your city? Has this child an ideological advanced approach to identifying his enemy on a sectarian basis? What happened and why was a political pacifist movement for freedom and dignity transformed in less than 1 year into a dirty war? Here in London, I tried 14 months ago to speak about the difference between revolution and war. I gave the French proverb, à la guerre comme à la guerre. In war as in war, I think, translation. Or the Arabic one, al-harb khida, war is deceit. Now killing in both sides becomes criminal. The antagonists share everyone with his own capacities and tools. Kidnapping, torture, extrajudicial killings, and after everything, falsification. Some factions of the opposition still talking about the inadmissibility of comparison between the victim and the execution. Our diagnosis is very different. In war, there are war crimes and war against humanity to denounce. War is not a pacifist demonstration attacked by the army, al-mukhabarat, or al-shabiah. On the same occasion, I spoke about the example of Lebanon 1858, 1860. How Tanyos Shaheen, villagers' intifada becomes a sectarian movement. Some of my critics spoke about me as a defeatist who was awakening the revolutionary sentiment, إضعاف الشعور الثوري, a comic deviation of the regime's terminology, awakening the national sentiment, إضعاف الشعور القومي. Michel Tilo spent 3 years because he was behind the awakening of national sentiment one day. Today nobody speaks about revolution. We all speak about the war in Syria. The principal question unfortunately becomes, are you with or against war? In other words, with or against violence. The generalization of violence was the way of solution for the dictatorship. Isolated from inside and outside, the official propaganda was based on the conspiracy theory and the fabricated opposition armed groups. Up to August 2011, the Syrian government's media hadn't any name to describe the armed imagined groups. From Jisr al-Shu'ur to Ma'arat al-Nu'man, the path of militarization of the popular movement was not fun. Day after day, the regime reinforces the military solution. Unfortunately, the Syrian external opposition lost the pacifist role in its daily propaganda. After a period of denying any militarization, Gulf media and Islamist virtual networks began to speak openly about Al-Farouq, Battalion, and the Free Army. Rapidly, Al-Arabiya and Al Jazeera overvalued the armed struggle in Syria. They stopped mentioning the forms of civilian resistance. The spokesperson of the Free Army groups take the place of politicians. The most important claim of the SNC members' TV interventions become give the necessary arms to SFA. The Syrian authorities win the second round. And the official propaganda becomes, don't speak anymore about pacifist revolution. Don't deny the existence of military groups. They were underground waiting for the right moment. For the majority of Western media, Syrian Free Army is beautiful. Jihadists in Syria are not dangerous. Militarization is inevitable, and negotiation as political solution with the Assad regime is impossible. For the National Coordination Body for Democratic Change, militarization means the political and financial dependence on the military opposition, the marginalization of democratic forces, and the reinforcement of sectarian extremists and the black Islamist groups, black like oil, black like darkness, and black like exclusion. Let us speak about human and material costs of war. Violence in Syria has all the socio-cultural elements to be based on organic structure. It will be sectarian and religious more than civilian, because the motivation of class, nationalism, or democracy for violence remains very weak in the Syrian reality. Armed groups are a luxury for which our democratic and pacifist revolution cannot pay the cost. More than 40,000 killed, to remember only 20% of them before the armed confrontations. More than 200,000 injured, 30,000 disappeared, 29% of health infrastructure completely damaged, 85 villages and neighborhoods have been completely destroyed, more than 2 million displaced, 380,000 refugees. The economical cost today is largely more than $150 billion. In a very crucial moment of our history, how we can comment on the scandal of political money and to speak about new forms of corruption inside and outside the country. In any society, social movement is strong if it remains attractive to the majority of its society. In Syria, from the beginning in Daraa, we did our best to reinforce the element of progress in the spontaneous movement for freedom, dignity, justice, equality, against despotism and corruption. And I launched the Free No in the third week. No to violence, no to sectarianism, no to foreign intervention. Because we know that the multi-sectarian, multi-religious, and multicultural composition of the Syrian identity is not the same as Libya or Tunisia. We cannot go to the radical change without a global approach of modernity and the clear imprint of the civilian state. The city in geopolitics, civism in the revolutionary culture, and citizenship in the political institution are very important elements to win the majorities sensu lago. That means structural minorities and political ones. In the Syrian society under dictatorship, civil and political freedoms were limited, but social freedoms were better protected than many Arab countries. The example given by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and sectarian Gulf media doesn't give any confidence to many categories of the population. If we look to the reaction in Aleppo after the attack of military groups on the city, we can understand the invisible conflict between two categories. One essentially a rural, traditionalist, marginalized and influenced by Salafi group. The second is composed of townsmen and minorities who are still afraid of these violent groups. But some superficial journalists are still speaking about Aleppo as Benghazi, Syria. It is perhaps necessary to review the problematic elements of the Libyan model in Syria. Very early, some Syrian and French politicians and intellectuals tried to copy the example of Libya, from changing the flag to calling for NATO's intervention, as to structure, function, and political projects. The Syrian National Council is the Syrian copy of the Libyan Transitional Council. Mr. Alain Juppé, French ex-minister for Foreign Affairs, lapsed into calling the SNC by the initials LTC. They had this image of reorganizing Libya Act II in Syria, which was considered by us to be a real tragedy. I very quickly met some Russian diplomats, and then I understood that they have what I can call as psychotherapists, Libyan complex. Not only that, but they discovered early on that this was the occasion to open the door to the post-American unipolar era. Ruse of reason. In the words of Hegel, Syrian progressives were the first to fight against American domination. And are we here paying the price for this transformation? Another surprise, the Kurdish region in Syria doesn't like to join SFA, a high commission composed essentially of the most important political forces, PYD and KNC, is trying to negotiate a kind of democratic local administration under the heavy watch of anti-Kurdish government in Ankara. The European chancelleries refused to see in this event a normal continuity of political tradition of the Kurdish political movement in Syria, which was the only pacifist example in Kurdistan. There is no doubt that external eyes, which began some time ago to prepare the research and plans that were called the day after, will find themselves very far from the ground. Even the decisions of the Syrian Opposition Conference in Cairo in July 2012 called for supporting of the Free Army and armed resistance and forbid to claim the importance of civil resistance, the formation of popular committees and citizenship structures which could be able to reduce the chaos of violence, organized crime, Salafist groups and foreign jihadists in Syria. Never Never in the modern history of the region have we seen an example of democracy being built after such an escalation of violence. Where are we going? Is military victory an appropriate term to describe the probabilities of the so-called local prevail, الغلبة المحلية, as Ibn Khaldun's terminology, on the incapacity to build a central state? In 2011, we were the example for many peoples and nations. Today we are a small part of nations again. War is not our fate. Not only it is possible to stop it, we must do our best to do that. First of all, to save what we can from the values of the revolution. Secondly, to stop killing and destruction. And thirdly, to protect our future and to stop the process of assassination of the intellect. Thank you.